In Python, there are several ways to iterate over sequences like lists, tuples, and strings. Here are the 5 most common methods. The first one is using for loop. This is the most straightforward way to iterate over elements in a sequence. Let's assume you have a list with 4 elements, and you want to print each element one by one. During the first iteration, the line that says for item in my list, it will first check whether there is element in my list. If it is true, and since this is the first iteration of the loop, it will copy the value of the first element and pass it to the variable called item. Inside the loop, the variable item is passed into a print function and gets printed out, so the first output will be 31. The program then loops back to the beginning of the for loop for the second iteration. As always, here it will check if there is more element in my list. Since there is still element in my list, and since this is the second iteration, it copies the value of the second element into the variable item. In the loop, the variable item is passed into print function and gets printed out. And again, the program loops back to the beginning of the for loop, fetching for the next element in the list and repeating the same process over and over again until there are no more elements in the list. The second iteration is using range function with for loop. This is index-based iteration, and it is useful when you need the index of each item. In the first line of the for loop, the len function will get the length of my list, which is 4, because it has 4 elements. Internally, the range statement is simplified to range 4, which basically produces a list that contains numbers starting from 0 until 3. So now we are iterating over a sequence which is a list that contains values 0, 1, 2, and 3. Now remember, every time the program execution is at this line, it will check if there is more element in the list. Since this is the first iteration and the list is not empty, it will copy the value of the first element into variable I. In the loop and in the print function, it will later print index 0. Right after the colon, the my list is referenced with index 0. And in my list, the value of the element at index 0 is 31. So the output will be index 0:31. The program will loop back to the beginning of the loop for the second iteration. As always, at this line, the program checks if there is more element in my list. Since there is still element in the list, it will copy the value of the second element into variable I. In the loop, the variable I, which contains value 1, will be used to fetch my list with index 1. Since my list with index 1 contains 29, the output will be index 1:29. And again, the program loops back to the beginning of the for loop, fetching for the next element in the list and repeating the same process over and over again until there are no more elements in the list. The third iteration method is using enumerate function. This provides both the index and value at each iteration. Here, the enumerate function is using my list as the argument. Compared to the previous 2 methods that we have seen, the for loop uses only one variable during the iteration process. The enumerate method uses 2 variables, which is to get the index as well as the value of the corresponding element. Let's understand how it works. As you know, a list contains elements with values and their corresponding indexes. During the first iteration, the variable index will be 0 and the variable value will be 31. The print function in the loop will then produce index 0:31 as the output. Moving on to the second iteration, the variable index will be 1 and the variable value will be 29. The print function in the loop will then produce index 1:29 as the output. And again, the program loops back to the beginning of the for loop, fetching for the next element in the list and repeating the same process over and over again until there are no more elements in the list. The fourth method is using zip function. This allows you to iterate over multiple sequences at the same time. Let's say you have two lists, and you arrange the list as the zip function arguments. The variable val1 and val2 will get the value of the respective list every time the loop iterates. For example, in the first iteration, values 31 and 67 will be copied to val1 and val2. The values will be used in the loop body accordingly. The output of the first iteration is 31:67. The process is the same as in the previous three methods, where it will loop back to the beginning of the loop, fetching the next element in the list, repeating the same process over and over again until there are no more elements in the list. The fifth iteration method is using while loop. This is useful if you need more control over the iteration process. In this code, the I equals to 0 sets up the starting point, which tells the computer to start counting at index 0. A while loop needs a way to know when to stop. The line with the code while I less than len of my list means keep running this loop as long as I is smaller than the total number of items in the list, which is 4. The I plus equal 1 here is where it will make the loop stops. When I gets bigger than len of my list, the while condition will become false and skip executing the body of the while loop. Let's look at the first iteration. I now is 0. 0 is less than 4, so this while condition evaluates to true, and it starts entering the body of the while loop. Because my list of 0 is 31, therefore the print statement will print 31. Next, I is incremented with 1. The program jumps back to the beginning of the while loop and tests the condition again. Is 1 less than 4? This evaluates to true. It enters the body of the while loop again with I equals to 1. Since my list of 1 is 29, the print statement outputs 29. I, which is currently 1, is incremented to 2. The loop proceeds to the next iteration, repeating the same processes over and over again until the while condition evaluates to false. Which for this code example, when I equals to 4 and the condition is testing is 4 less than 4, this is where it evaluates to false and exit the loop. Alright, that's it for today's tutorial. Thanks for watching and make sure to like and subscribe to this channel.